Beyond the map's edge, can you find what lives in time, flowing through each measured rhyme? Wisdom waits in shadowed sight for those who read these words just right. As hope surges, clear and bright, walk near water's silent flight. Round the bend, past the hole, I wait for you to cast your pole. In Ursa East, his realm awaits, his bride stands guard at ancient gates. Her foot of 3 at 20°, return her face to find the place. Double arcs on granite bold, where secrets of the past still hold. Beyond the reach of time's swift race, wonder guards the sacred space. Truth rests not in clever minds, not in tangled, twisted finds. Like a river's steady flow, what you seek, you already know. Now, in the legal lowdown section, on page 214, Justin writes, the essence of this endeavor is leaving behind of a treasure is to invite, to weave a narrative thread that binds my story to whoever dares follow the breadcrumbs. In a world where we're often told to look but not touch, I offer something tangible, a real-life adventure that demands nothing more than the courage to seek and the joy of the find. So, one thing that I interpret in this whole story, book, poem, song, everything, I feel Justin's telling us that he wants us to go on an adventure, find memories along the way, meet people, do things that scare you, all sorts of stuff. Now in the dubious decision, it says, remember, every adventure is a story waiting to be written, and you're the author. Equip yourself with gear, knowledge, and a healthy dose of caution. May your journeys be wild, your spirits high, and your adventures safe. Here's to navigating the great unknown with wisdom as your compass and a good story as your destination. When we go back to the introduction, there's an area down here. It says it's waiting just beyond your comfort zone, beyond your map's edge. In this section, this is the last part of episode 3 when Justin's talking about hiding the treasure. He says, I think Lewis Carroll said it best. In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take. Now, if you look at the full quote, it says, in the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, the relationships we were afraid to have, and the decisions we waited too long to make. So I think we're supposed to be doing all sorts of these things. But don't take too long, because we can't wait too long. I think it's our job to create a narrative, to thread his story that binds to whoever dares follow the breadcrumbs. Can you find what lives in time, flowing through each measured rhyme? Wisdom waits in shadowed sight for those who read these words just right. Now, can you find what lives in time? That makes me think of, capturing a memory, something that would live in time. A photograph could live in time. So in Netflix's Golden Greed, The Hunt for Forsven's Treasure, I feel like there's a lot of subtle hints in here that might be intentional, might be unintentional. But after watching and examining the documentary, I have a feeling that Justin is pointing us to a particular location. There are so many places that are mentioned in this documentary, and they talk about them by name, but there's this certain area which is in Montana, and it's near the Pioneer Scenic Byway, which is where Wise River is, and never once do they mention Montana in this area in the documentary. But when all the other hunters are talking about themselves, you see shots that kind of line up with the correct locations of where they're at. So I thought it was very weird that we don't talk about this area on the documentary. Now, if you go to the last episode 3, and come down here, sorry. In this section, this is where Justin is at the Heritage Building. He's looking at the treasure, and he says, what Forrest created was something more than a treasure. It was something magical. It was something pure. It was something that captured your youth. Now, in this section, what stands out to me is if you get distracted by the treasure, you're missing the message here, because he's saying what Forrest created was something more than a treasure. So something is more than the gold. And if you look down here, he says it was something that captured your youth. Now, captured is a photographic term. And then this is also interesting because when he said that captured, he enunciates. And here's the clock. If you're looking at it, what time is that? That looks like 5:26 to me. And he looks exactly up at the clock. Now, the other thing I find very interesting in this whole documentary is Justin starts talking about how he spent countless hours examining interviews of Forrest Fenn, and he developed, this facial recognition software. Now, he says, if you can unlock for a person a set of micro expressions that indicate something suspicious, that is gold. So I feel like when you're watching the documentary, Justin may have used this method for examining Forrest Fenn, but now I believe he's telling us to watch him very closely, because if you can indicate something suspicious, that's gold. And there's certain tells that Justin will have throughout this whole story. And just the way that they showcase looking through glasses, all sorts of stuff, he starts making these weird hand gestures and eye movements. And once you understand him, the story becomes a little bit more clear. Now, on page 158, we're in the Curious Confluence. It says, my dad always said you can judge a man by his eyes. So I feel like this, again, circles back around to the facial expressions that we need to pay attention to, and that the eyes are going to be very telling. So Justin's eyes are going to be telling you the truth. So back to this section, he says, no one knows what the hints are besides me. In this area, he shakes his head and closes his eyes. So when he enunciates, not even the producers, that's when he's, closing his eyes and shaking his head. And remember, he brought up, if you can unlock a set of micro expressions that indicates something suspicious, that's gold. So this area, we lose eye contact. He closes his eyes and shakes his hand. So I think this is a hint that, and I could be wrong, but the producers may actually be in on it. Flowing through each measured rhyme. Now, flowing through each measured rhyme makes me think of a river. Wise River actually used to be called Wisdom River, and waits in shadowed sight. Now, there's this view from the Grand Vista where if you're looking out towards the Pioneers, on your right, there's a mountain that's called the Seymour Mountain. And then for those who read these words just right. In episode 2 at 46:08, Justin says, all of a sudden it was clear I was running out of time to find the treasure. And he's looking straight into the camera. I think he's telling us to pay attention here. We have a very limited time or a fleeting window to find this treasure. And then he says, it's really rare for me to find a situation where data drove me to a location that also coincided with, dare I say, a feeling. If we come back to the beginning, so episode 1, this is where we see Dorothy. She says, but you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And then the hunters took off. This shot is in the Pioneer Scenic Byway, which this is where it started getting interesting for me, because everywhere that they went in the documentary, they were mentioning the location, but they never once mentioned the Pioneer Scenic Byway. And in this area, it says the same clues were sending us to totally different locations. Pioneer Scenic Byway, Pioneer Scenic Byway, Pioneer Scenic Byway. We keep seeing these shots. And we all know that Justin's grandfather was a game warden in this area. And you can see the book in this section. So immediately that draws me into that location. You look at the treasure, it's in the saddleback leather grandfather briefcase. I mean, come on. Grandfather Saddleback. There's Saddleback Mountain up in the Pioneer Mountains. And you know, you start following these shots and we'll see Justin's topo truck driving us to certain locations. If you use the sun, you can tell which directions he is driving to. And there's an area where right in the middle, there is the grand vista. Now in the book, in the introduction section, he talks about, but here's the irony, I'm writing blind. Now, I'm not exactly sure of timeline, but what if he wrote the book after the documentary was complete and he's using the story to write his own narrative to draw us to a certain location, which I'm gonna get there, but once you get there, it's gonna make so much sense. This is the infamous acknowledgements page. We have all examined this probably 100 times, and we have looked at this a million times as well. So the best treasures, after all, often hide in plain sight, sometimes between the lines of an acknowledgements page. Pay attention to this, because a lot of people have been looking at this photograph and they think that maybe this is the, you know, the hidden in plain sight reference, whether the chest is like barren on the ground, all this kind of stuff. However, you're overlooking, this money's distracting you again, you're overlooking this beautiful person, Dave Clawson. He is a treasure within his own. He is actually in the credits on the documentary as a director of photography. So remember that. If you look in this section, he mentions the entire cast and crew. Says, you brought the hunt to Fenn's treasure to the screen with the responsibility and nuance it deserved. Through countless hours of footage and complex storylines, you found the heart of what drives someone to search for hidden treasure. Now, remember, all pieces of a puzzle. This owes its existence to many such discoveries and the people behind them. So the people are a treasure as well. This, I believe, is part of the solution. Everyone in the documentary is involved in some way, whether they know it or not. I believe the producers are in on it, but not the hunters. However, you need to follow each story for clues to solve the puzzle. Justin wrote blind, molding the story around the documentary. Okay? So now we come to episode 3 at 26:22. This is Justin. He's talking about Jack Stoof. He also made it clear he didn't want to give any further information. And he says there were really interesting tidbits there specifically. And he enunciates, but you can see Justin's topo truck driving down this stretch of a road. Now, I was able to find this exact spot at the Pioneer Scenic Byway. And then he also says, and he does so very specifically. Again, he's enunciating, so he's pulling us into this Pioneer Scenic Byway. Hey guys, I just wanted to come on here and document my journey a little bit as I figure out where all of these places have been filmed in the documentary. I am starting at one of the end points, and this is the northernmost point that I saw on the documentary. I'm at the Pioneer Scenic Byway, and I'm at this interpretive sign here. It's the Master Mountain Carvers interpretive sign, and there were a couple shots in the documentary where you see a drone. It's kind of flying up towards a mountain range. Here's the section. So this is episode 1, 28 minutes in, and we see this shot that the drone is kind of like flying inward towards this mountain range here. And Justin says, you got to start at the beginning. You got to start where warm waters halt, and that kicks off the adventure. And here's kind of the general area of where it is. That's one of them. There was one where it didn't have any text on it. And then there was another, we saw a clip where not too far, but too far to walk. So if we're using force fens, poem as well in a way for this treasure hunt, I think it's a lot more connected than we originally anticipated, but this would be kind of like the starting point going in one of the directions. Now, he is seen in that same truck. I don't know if it's exactly Justin driving, but it is his truck. And there's an area where he's driving south to north and then north to south. Now we're at the northernmost point and driving south. And I found, let me see if I can point to it, the river area where you see that shot. And I'm going to add some photos within this video too so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But it was right off in this distance. In episode 1, 2713, this is when Justin's teaching Tucker how to sniff out bronze. And I was able to locate this exact same spot. If you look up here, you can see this mountain range and it creates like a double arc. And here is when I went to check out the location. Now you can see mine more clearly because the lighting's different in the day. But I was able to compare by this brush to this brush and then the rocks that are in the area. So this area in the Pioneer Scenic Byway, we are at this interpretive sign that says Raising Pioneers, a Mountain Moving Experience. And when you think of Justin's poem, I always I don't know, when I came here before, I was like, that kind of looks like double arcs to me. And so I thought it was interesting. We also have Comet Mountain over here. Justin had mentioned that, you know, the differences between the ebook and the hardcover are intentional. So there's a section, let's see, right here. An image of Aiden, Mike, and Justin. They're on Comet Mountain. This is not in the ebook, but it is in the hardcover. All right, I'm not on the exact spot, I don't think. Or if I am, I'm not too far, but okay, so take note of the mountain range in the back. You see those double arcs? And then you look, and there's the double arcs. I wonder if that's if this part, and this is the bush there. In the section here where, you know, we see all of this happening at about 27:43 in, Justin says, after Tucker did a pass, I never had to go back. So I believe he's telling us that it's not in this specific location. In the chapter, The Midnight Menace, page 95, we see a train here. This is Justin's mom. This is when the train got shot at and she goes out to look around. And we see a little raccoon here. And what I thought is maybe the 7670 could be altitude. And so Cynthia and I went out near the area where Justin was teaching Tucker how to sniff out bronze. And we went to a 7670 elevation. Definitely didn't find anything there, but I got another cute little video.
And a tiny little head. Oh, wait. Justin's arms.
There you go.
I need eyes.
What about little rocks? There's some pebbles in the sand.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay.
Coming back to this section, I see 7670, and then there's like this American flag on the train. And then if you look at this picture right here, it's very a distinctive design on a train. And I ended up running into this one area in Dillon, actually, where I saw that exact flag on a train. So I wanted to add a clip of that. I'm at the Beaverhead Museum. It's closed at the moment, but I've been walking along this boardwalk that goes all the way down there, and then it looks like it leads to this museum as well. I'm just kind of walking around, see what I see. But yeah, all of these names are carved into the wood beams on this walkway. These little tracks. Hi, Jay. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I mean, there's... Oh, we got number 3. This is very cool. Now, in this section, we've all read about Gracie's, and, you know, especially since I was in Dillon, I've had to go. I went twice. The first time I went, it was actually closed. But when I came back for the book signing, I ended up meeting Sharon and her husband, and they just have such a wonderful love story. She was actually going through heart surgery recovery, and that's why her shop was closed. And she told me there were a couple people there that were a little impatient on getting inside, but please let the woman heal. But in this chapter, I was talking, or Justin says, I was here among ancient display cases that held Rocky Mountain beetles frozen in amber time. That I discovered my treasure was a hand-drawn map from the late 19th century nestled between 2 beetle displays like a secret slipped through time's fingers. Now, secret slipped through time's fingers, I did run into something that gave me goose pimplies. So I'll show you a video of that. This store looks really fun. It might be open tomorrow, I'm not sure. I'm gonna try and come back. But it's got so many fun little trinkets. This actually reminds me of this exact Santa Claus that my mom had when we were little. There's your favorite Christmas tunes. Home Sweet Home. There's a clock over here. It's got an interesting time on it. I don't know if that's a note or a nod to anything. There's a fun little coffee mug fence. This has got some fun signs too. We knew grandchildren would be so much fun, we'd have them first. Good friends are hard to find, difficult to leave, and impossible to forget. Here's another. Don't drive faster than your guardian angel's wings can fly. And then, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then we got this sign down here. This Western Ironworks, Butte, Montana. Little Halloween highway. Aloha. Here's another clock. Okay. And then this was the gate Justin was talking about in the book. It's very ornate. And then this wall over here is made of crystals, the whole thing. We got some rose quartz in here. This looks like petrified wood. This is coral fossil. Possibly glass, maybe fluorite, I'm not sure. This is so beautiful. I think this is obsidian down here. This almost looks like a jasper of some sort. Yeah. More petrified wood. This is the whole yard back here. So cool. There's a totem. I hear the birdies. This wall is just stunning. I hope that never gets torn down. That's a piece of artwork in its own. What else do we have down here? Peninsula circulator. And then she's got a fence down there. In episode 1, 807, this is where we see Dorothy. She's talking about the treasure hunters took off, but you know, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And here's the Netflix image, and then this is my image. I am at the Pioneer Scenic Byway. This is the Lupine Picnic Shelter area. And I came here Memorial Day weekend, and I was scoping out all of these locations that we see being filmed for the documentary. And when I was walking this area, I found something that caught my attention, and it was a location I had been looking for. But when I came up here, you can see this very distinctive dead tree. And then you come over this way, this road is also very distinctive. As hope surges, clear and bright, walk near water's silent flight. Round the bend, past the hole, I wait for you to cast your pole. Now, I've always taken this interpretation, walk near water's silent flight, as if you look at Wise River, it actually flows from south to north. So for me, water's silent flight is the river flowing northernly. Round the bend, past the hole, I think the hole is Justin's fishing spot that we see in the documentary, and I'll show some clips here. In episode 2, 1808, we see Justin at his fishing spot, and I was able to locate this area. Now, if you watch the flow of the shot, it's kind of interesting. So it's fishing, you see this, and we're starting to see that this grassy area in the back is pretty interesting. And then it flows over to Justin here. Now we're in the chapter The Lost Liberators, and Justin's talking about being the proud steward of a White's metal detector. I had chosen a different path to glory, searching by treasure by waving a dented pole over empty lots in Tucson heat. Now, the fact that he uses, I wait for you to cast your pole, and then pole in correlation to his metal detector, I'm like, okay, I gotta go to this fishing spot and bring my metal detector and go check out that area. I definitely did that. Now, the story does go much further than that, but I wanted to show some fun videos of my experience. So now we're in episode 2. This is where Ben Wallace is talking about, it drew in a whole new wave, and then you hear a drum sound. With all the correlations of Justin's grandfather and sending the family Christmas trees, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go check out this tree. All right, I know that this is hard to see because the sun is up ahead, but this is where Justin was fishing, and you can tell because of that tree, that big old tall tree in the distance. And then there was like a bush in the foreground, but he was standing about this direction when he was casting his pole. So is he waiting for me to cast my pole? So I've got my version of Tucker, and there's a spot over there on that bank. Well, it's very similar to where Tucker was sitting, but I don't know if it's like this spot or a little bit further down. So I'm gonna do a little bit more walking. It does look a little deep for my comfort here. I'm very short, so I can't get too deep in the water. I'm just gonna kind of poke around. I might try this again tomorrow morning when the sun is behind me, because it's really hard to see how deep the water is from where I'm at. Like here it looks pretty shallow, but I'm not sure like in this area. And I need to get across the river somewhere so I can be in that section. In the dubious decision, this talks about a bunch of different ways to be prepared on your journey. And I liked this one. Experience matters. Venturing into the backcountry without knowing how is like entering a cooking contest with microwave skills. Team up with the pro. Their experience is your cheat code.
Strong.
It is.
Ooh, cold. Oh, it's almost getting to my pocket. Shit. With my phone.
You can do it. You're almost here. There you go. Find it?
We're the fighters. We won't stop, won't quit no matter the cost. We keeping on.
There's my scat. I'm gonna touch the. Oh my God, it's warm. No, it's not. I'm kidding. It had ants. Because when I searched for forest fen, every time I went to what I used for my warm water, I always had to touch the water.
Okay.
That was my thing.
Yep.
I go to my first clue, warm water, and I touch the water.
And what is it about muscat for this one?
There's nothing about muscat really for Justin Posey's treasure hunt.
Yeah.
It's just that we are in the willows and there could be moose.
I know. We're going to find a moose before we leave.
Sort of.
Another thing I noticed that was really cute, you know, we have Cynthia talking about muscat, and these little markings look like muscat, and then that symbol, that's a symbol for female. As hope surges clear and bright, walk near water, silent flight. So I just explained my version of that. So I believe you have to walk near Wise River that flows south to north, round the bend, past the hole. I believe that's Justin's fishing hole, which I explored, used my pole, which was a metal detector. However, I think this is a different iteration here, and we got to go back to the documentary to explore that a little bit more. But what I think this means is round the bend past Justin's fishing hole. And when you go back to Forrest Fenn's poem, and they're talking about put in below the home of Brown, Justin said, well, he's a fisherman, so what does that mean? That down means downstream. So downstream from the hole would be north. Now, remember this section, it's episode 1, 2655. Justin pulls in with the truck. He opens the gate, and then he actually puts on a backpack here. I was able to find this spot, which is south of the Little Joe campground. I think he's pointing out that he's putting on a backpack, and we're supposed to be following this backpack. But I was able to find the exact location of where he parked his truck. I was able to figure this out by, there's a tree stump right there, and then there's a little marking on this tree. And if you watch very carefully, that is exactly what that looks like. And then I believe whoever was filming was at one of these trees here. I'm a little short, so I won't get the same perspective they had, but I believe they used one of these trees. It was either one of those or one of those. And again, I don't have the right lens perspective. But if you look at the markings on these trees and then where his truck was parked, and then there's this tree too. I was also able to line up the branches from the trees behind the car because they actually do a panning shot. So they start up here and then they come down with this truck. Obviously it's a horizontal perspective versus my vertical, but you get the gist of it. In the audiobook, we did get an added chapter called Las Camarones Calientes. And a lot of people have been pointing out this section. So rule number 1, carved in stone. Never shall wheel touch checkpoint soil. Foot traffic only. Now, my interpretation of this is, since, you know, we're kind of being taken on this journey by watching Justin's truck and the drone shots, it's going to be in an area where we don't see his truck, and that is what helped me cross off the fishing section on my list. Now the next part that is even more mind-blowing is there's this beautiful S-shape curve in the river, and there's a particular shot where there is a drone that hovers over it, and there is this drum noise that we hear. So I looked on Google Maps and I was able to figure out it's this exact location. It says it's not just a few people now who are searching for it. And then there's the drone. It does like, it hovers over here, you hear the drum, and then it like flies forward. And as it continues forward, you kind of see the grand vista off in the distance. And this is my interpretation of round the bend past the hole. So if this is the fishing spot, you go round the bend that is past the hole, and then kind of up on the map here, this is where the Grand Vista is. Now this is where it really starts to get fun. We go back to episode 1, 1501. In Justin's book on page 2, he talks about hide and seek at our house wasn't just you hide and I'll look for you. It was a tactical operation that sometimes required bribing a chicken to keep your location secret. And we see Chris Hurst. I believe this is Chris Sr. And he says, chick, chick, chicken, chick, chick, chick. So I feel like he's trying to tell us to follow this thread of storyline to the end to get some more answers to the solve of this. So in the documentary, this is episode 3, 1556. This is when Cynthia and Forrest are exchanging emails. And he talks about, okay, park outside the gate and then follow the hose to the end. The wording, then follow the hose to the end, is interesting to me because there is this scene, if you guys remember, that Chris Hurst is using Dorito bags as socks. I think this is a nod that we need to follow the end of the Hurst storyline to find the answers to the solve beyond the map's edge. Because if you look in the image, there's a hose in the shot. I'm not exactly sure if this is even anything to do with anything. Again, I'm losing my marbles, but I'm at this Best Western. I've stayed here a couple nights a few days ago, and there's a girl that works at the front desk. I don't know what her name is, but she had asked me where I stayed last night, and I told her I slept at the Grand Vista and was taking photos throughout the night. And then when I said that, she literally handed me a bag of Doritos. Is this a follow the hose to the end? Because when that is being said, I feel like that's pointing to something. But then you go to the Hurst family, and the dad was in a cabin of some sort, and there's the end of a hose that's right near his feet, and he's putting a Dorito bag on his foot for socks, or taking them off because he didn't have socks, so he had a Dorito bag. Why did I get a random Dorito bag from this woman at the hotel after I told her I spent the night taking pictures at the Grand Vista? Is this a sign? I have no idea. Here's another fun section in the book. So the audiobook added a line right in here that said, "You taught me the difference between reality and fantasy isn't a wall, it's a map waiting to be drawn." So now at about episode 3, 2 minutes, 8 seconds in, this area is where Forrest Fenn is talking about the treasure's been found, and then pictures were sent, and it was the photographs are as you remember it. Yeah, it's just so compelling. What I found interesting here is that we don't see Jack Stoof's photograph on the computer monitor of Forrest Fenn's treasure. We actually, if you look, remember this little marking in the snow? If you come here, it's the same little marking that's in the snow there. And these are just other indications that I was able to compare the photographs. Now, why on earth would they include the Hearst photo when Forrest says that he found the treasure, but the Hearst family was not the one that found Forrest's treasure? And the image was completely different. It was of a chest sitting on a ground closely cropped in. So again, I think we need to follow the Hearst storyline. Now, in episode 2 at 5303, Chris Sr. says, "As soon as we found the bear, I sent him pictures of everything." And then he sets his phone on this book, and I was able to find what it was. It's called Once Upon a While, a Third Memoir by Forrest Fenn, and it's of a fisherman catching stars. Now, my artistic interpretation of catching stars would be taking a photograph of them. And in Justin's poem, he talks about, I wait for you to cast your pole. What if this is what he's talking about? To fish for stars. I dove into it a little bit more. So there's a line in the documentary. Where are we? We are around episode 24855. Hearst Jr. says, maybe the treasure that he speaks of is not a box of gold. It's a treasure of another kind. And then if you go into the foreword of the book, well, first off, you come here and it says Treasure of Another Kind, foreword by Douglas Preston. And in here it says, Forrest above all, a creator and teller of amazing stories. These stories are a treasure of another kind, and some of them, who knows, may contain clues to the location of the real treasure. Now, again, this kind of circles back around what Justin's telling us to do, is to weave this narrative together, to create memories, artwork, a story. And fishing for stars, casting a pole, this location, a clock. Still, the details are not all there, but I promise you it's going to be good. Now we're in the Weeple winners, and there's a section here that says, second, we live in a world of perceived value. Now, once you start understanding Justin, you're starting to develop this sense of what he values. There's a section in The Treasure Tempest, let's see, we're on page 47, that says, this treasure, it's as real as the ground beneath your feet. And if we go into, right here, it says, remind me that the stories surround us everywhere, and sometimes the most remarkable discoveries come when we're looking for something else entirely. And if we look up here, Justin's got a raccoon sweater on, and we know that raccoons are a clue. In the Fitzwater chapter, page 13, Justin talks about his grandfather. His annual migrations may have given us a rhythm to live by, but it was those northern moments that gave us something far more precious, a legacy of wilder places and wilder stories, each one as true as the North Star and twice as bright. In Ursa East his Roma waits, his bride stands guard at ancient gates. Her foot of 3, at 20 degree, return her face to find the place. In the chapter The Snout Scout, page 167, Justin writes, there's something about the phrase Upper Rio Grande that makes you expect to stumble upon a hidden treasure. Instead, I found myself alongside a small footbridge, staring up at a silly rock. This wasn't your garden variety boulder. No, this was a rock with delusions of grandeur, shaped like an arrow pointing at emphatically, well, that was the $1,000,000 question, wasn't it? Now, we're at the Grand Vista, and he says, there's something about the phrase Upper Rio Grande, and the fact that he's been driving around in the Pioneer Scenic Byway, one, it's never even mentioned in the documentary, so that's weird to me. And then you look over here, and when you're at the Grand Vista, there's this T-shaped footbridge, and it kind of points off into this direction. Well, if you look in the mountains here, and I'll show a clearer picture, but it kind of looks like the profile of a face. In the chapter Dad's House on page 8, there's this section that says, like a movie director blocking an epic scene, pointing out landmarks that existed only in his mind. And, you know, when I look at that mountain range, I am seeing that profile of a woman. In the Paternal Ploy chapter, this is where Justin's still trying to get into Victoria Peak, and his dad drives him to go see a neighboring rancher. And then in this section, he talks about his face was a topographical map. Now, when looking at the cover art, we do know that Justin designed this, and a lot of people have been matching like this part of the face up with the edge of Montana. But when I look at this, I see like a profile of a man. He's got a little bit of a beard. Here's his nose, his mouth. And then we see beyond the map's edge, right in the middle of the head part. Now, in the introductory section of the book, it says, "Here's what I learned after a decade of treasure hunting. It's not about the gold. It's about understanding the mind of the person who hid it, their story, their obsessions, and their places that shaped them." Now, if we go back to the cover here, there's a man. But if you turn here, I don't know if you can see it, but I see like a woman's profile. You can see lips, a nose, her eye, eyelash. And the fact that I was at a Grand Vista that has like a female profile, I mean, it has feminine features in my opinion. Return her face to find the place. There's a face of a woman in the mountains. If we go back to this section in episode 3 where we see the treasure and it kind of flows into this image, if you zoom in, that matches up perfectly with the mountain shape that you see from the Grand Vista. You can see the face shape right there. And when I saw this on the documentary, I freaked out and was like, I need to go and investigate this area. And then remember, we're looking at the treasure, but it was something more than the treasure. It was something magical, something pure, something that captured your youth. So now that we're here, he's talking about that captured your youth. And this part is Comet Mountain. And remember, in the ebook and hardcover differences, there was the image of Aiden, Mike, and Justin over in Comet Mountain. I mean, if you stand at the Grand Vista and you take a picture of this, it's encapsulating a lot of these puzzle pieces, which is insane. So in the documentary, episode 1, 3204, the Hearst fam, or I think this is Chris, Chris Jr. saying this. We had it all lined up to a T. The only thing that we were missing was visualizing the final clue. So if you stand at this bridge, it actually points 20 degrees southeast. And you know, I feel like a lot of people would take this into consideration, that you stand on the footbridge and you literally, you know, it's orienting you to walk this way, and maybe you would run into the treasure. But if you go a little bit further, the next line that's being said, Justin talks about trying to figure out where this heavy lows was in water high, and we couldn't quite piece it together. Sometimes you just needed to take a step back and reanalyze to get a new footing. So if you're at the T-bridge, you're lower in elevation. But if you step up on a higher elevation, there is this interpretive sign that, if you zoom in, this says, but they also need each other. Like pieces of a puzzle, they're all interdependent and together form a complete picture. If you take away a bug or beaver, the picture is left with a piece missing. Now, he says, and we couldn't quite piece it together. So keep that in mind. But we are at the interpretive site. This is very important. I believe that this is the checkpoint. So here we are. This is where I think the final destination is. That's part of it. Over off where these trees are, there's a campsite called Little Joe. Hopefully we have some spots open when I come back with my papa. I suggest we stay right at this one. This one's got a good view. There's only a couple spots, but the view is quite beautiful. Looking up at the trees here. Oh, we got some garbage. What is this? Oh, beef jerky. We should probably not leave this here because it's bear country. All right, off to the Grand Vista. If you think of the show Bonanza, you come here, you see Bonanza, this is the show, and there's a character named Little Joe, and he's one of the main characters. Now in Justin's book, he's got a chapter that's called Bait Bonanza. I'm in the Bait Bonanza. We are on page 34. Now on the documentary, Justin says this was like finding a needle in a football field. Now, in this area, they talk about this wasn't just dinner. This was our Super Bowl. And if you look here, this section talks about, back then I thought Dad was just being peculiar. Now I understand he wasn't just picking a campsite. He was setting a stage for memories that would outlast him, adding our own layer of geological potluck where every epoch had brought something to share. There's another concept that we may be missing completely. In the treasure trail, when it says the real test of any spot, when boots are hit the ground, could 80-year-old forests have navigated the terrain? Do these poetic clues still sing when you're standing in the shadows? Being there changes everything. Because I think this whole treasure hunt is tied into Forest Fen, and I don't think that this beautiful woman believes that she's a part of this gorgeous puzzle. So at this stop, if you come over here and you read the sign, we see that there's this riparian habitat, wet, wild, and wonderful. And it talks about, below you lies the richest home of all. A wet and wonderful riparian meadow, chock full of water willows, bugs, beavers, moose, mallards. These plants and animals need this riparian area for food, shelter, and hiding nesting places. But they also need each other, like pieces of a puzzle. They are all interdependent and together form a complete picture. What if the treasure is not, I think the treasure is real, but I think in order to solve this puzzle, we need to form a complete picture. If you take away a bug or beaver, the picture is left with a missing piece. Oh my God. How poetic is this? Because the riparian picture in front of you has all of its pieces, an indication that a larger ecosystem supporting this habitat is healthy. Now, the documentary, the book, the poem, it's all interwoven. There's like this invisible thread that's tying this story together. And it all brings you to this final location, because the last shot where it's in the Pioneer Scenic Byway in the documentary, it's flying in towards these mountain peaks. And she sure looks like a face to me. And the foot of 3 is the bridge over there. What you seek, you already know. Well, if you watch the documentary, you know that they're walking us through how to find this treasure. And it ends up by the Hearst family basically saying that they sent pictures to Forrest and explaining how they got there. And Forrest Fenn's lawyer makes a weird facial gesture that says, "Send me pictures." This is the area in the documentary where it stood out to me. It was kind of weird. And we see Carl Summer, and he rubs his nose twice. And then this picture is shown. Now, the fact that it's circled in red makes me think that this is not where the treasure is. This was shot in Kerwin. And, he says, "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are." And this is where I think we need to circle back to Justin, see how the area is meaningful to him. And we come up here and we see these areas here that are circled. So when I look at the Love and Dog sign, I see Justin and Tucker. When I look at the coffee mug, it immediately makes me think of Justin's father drinking coffee the morning during his ritual feeding the birds, and his grandfather Fitzwater, who mailed the family tree for Christmas. That was a genuine noble fir from the Rockies. And last but most certainly not least, the little Volkswagen Beetle model car reminds me of Brandon once maintained a perfect score in slug bug for 3 straight hours. And these are the 4 points of Justin's compass. So I think the answer to this riddle is right in front of us, hidden in plain sight. Now, I may be completely wild, but something tells me that I'm onto something. I could be crazy, but everything pulls this place together so beautifully. That is what Forrest Fenn captured, was
magic. You know, like the quote that Justin says, and you know, something that captured his youth. He used to hang out with his whole family up in those mountain ranges. This whole thing comes together like one beautiful ecosystem. Every part of it is a piece of a puzzle. And the picture in front of you has all of its pieces.
So we are in the treasure trail. Now, if you look here, this goes back to when they're hunting for Forest Fence treasure, and everybody's obsessed about this blaze. And, you know, I don't believe Justin's using a tree blaze, you know, with a tree that has a mark in it, anything like that. He even said so specifically himself. So, but if read into this a little bit more, this was the game's heart. A mystery folded within mystery, hidden in plain sight. What I pieced together, remember the wording, very interesting. What I pieced together suggested something subtle, something that required eyes trained by years of searching to recognize. Not a shout, but a whisper. Not a sign, but a suggestion. The kind of marker that would mean nothing to most, but everything to the right observer. Now, I find it ironic because I am a photographer, and that blaze stood out to me a lot. But I feel like a huge part of this is to create a piece of artwork and tell a story along with it, because not only is the story and the people behind it a piece of the puzzle, but the finder themselves is also a piece of the puzzle. This face you can see from the grand vista. They're using a drone further inward in this area, but come on, I mean, wow. And then this is a fun quote from his book. The essence of this endeavor is leaving behind a treasure is to invite, to weave a narrative thread that binds my story to whoever dares follow the breadcrumbs. In a world where we're often told to look but not touch, I offer something tangible, a real-life adventure that demands nothing more than the courage to seek and the joy to find. And you can see here he's actually getting his picture taken with a Polaroid, and then it ends with this shot. Now this backpack does come into play, but that's a whole nother story. We'll get to that later.
What? This is like meta on a whole nother level. I'm kind of lost for words, but I think I may have solved the puzzle. We're still gonna go check out the area that's in the film, but I think it's beyond that. I think you have to come out here, you have to go on the journey or the ride. Take the ride along with Justin, and he's telling a beautiful story throughout this entire Scenic Byway. And whatever it is, it's in the middle. Well, this is in the middle of the Scenic Byway.
When looking at Justin's poem and we read the line, double arcs on granite bold, where secrets of the past still hold, I think double arcs has a double meaning. The first one, meaning if you're looking up at the Pioneer Mountains from the Grand Vista, you can see two arcs. Now, arcs are also used in storylines, and so I feel like they're hinting at this is both an arc in Justin's poem and also with Forrest Fenn's poem.
Cynthia may get all the answers that she was looking for. I don't think she really even knows how big this really is. But I hope she gets the answers she's looking for. I'm getting a little emotional. I met her a couple days ago, and we've been like soul sisters ever since, just in awe of the magic of this place. It's so beautiful. We never want to leave. She's up there flying her drone right now. I gave her a little bit of insights, but I still don't think she understands the story. I didn't go too full in depth with it, but I gave her some key points. What a journey. Thank you so much for this. My goodness, I have no words.
So I just showed a shot of the Grand Vista signs, the interpretive signs, and they both have anaconda carved on the base of them.
I did want to add another interesting thing is when you listen to Beyond the Map's Edge, where Justin was a lyricist on the project, it talks about breaking the chains. And when you look at the artwork that was created just for the visual, you see like a desolate planet, and there's two different covers. There's one of a woman looking off into the horizon and one of a man looking off into the horizon. Now, when you see a woman looking off into the horizon, you see the words beyond the map's edge. And how do we know where the edge is if we don't go out there and look? What if that is the edge? What if that is the treasure right there? This place is just like heaven on earth. I don't even know how to articulate it. Wow. I'll have more stories, but wow. Is this the answer right here? Is this the answer? No place like home, because you know, I feel like Brandon, he was the one who had a language along with the raccoons. And if you look at Bandit Banquet, there's a picture where they're in the bubbles. It looks like there's a Big Dipper, but there's also a sign that says home on it. This is one of the images that I was corresponding to the Grand Vista, because this in the bubbles kind of looks like a constellation to me. And remember, on the sign at the Grand Vista, it says there's no place like home. And no place like home. I feel like Dorothy. Am I supposed to click my heels 3 times? Wake up from this dream?
We all know the ebook and the hardcover have differences, and they are intentional. So when you look at the ebook, this is the only picture that's in color, is of the gold coins in this bin. And there's lots of different coins going on in here. But immediately, this just reminded me of a nod to Wizard of Oz. Now, if you think about it, this is a movie that stands out for working with Technicolor. And here's another thing. So if you go to living in Technicolor, what that means is experiencing a life with enhanced vibrancy, depth, richness, embracing all the colors and emotions that life has to offer, both good and bad. It's about finding joy and appreciation in the small things and engaging in life more fully. So this one, very important.
We're in the treasure section, page 194. He expressed his rebellion by concocting a treasure hunt, a brain teaser intricately interwoven with the essence of the American West. Forrest's audacious move was less about the physical treasure and more about an invitation to live in Technicolor, a beacon for anyone who's ever felt that itch to peel away the surface layer of life to glimpse the wild, pulsing heart beneath.
This is incredible.
This is really incredible. And you know he had a crane. Justin had a crane in his office. And here's a wheel that's in Forrest Fenn's property. Sure looks like, you know, when Shiloh walks right past it.
And I just wanted to show you a picture for reference. So, episode 2, 3646, you can kind of see. And then also on these interpretive signs, it says the West, the way that it used to be. So, the West, the way that it used to be. You know, Justin's family collected those True West magazines.
Wow. This whole journey. Incredible. And all the hunters in the documentary created the beautiful picture that we see in front of us. And they don't even know it. She doesn't even know it. I thought she was in on it, but she's not in on it.
I just wanted to come back on here and give some more thoughts to this incredible poem, book, story, everything. So raccoons are very important to the story in Beyond the Map's Edge. And if you look at raccoons, they're nocturnal animals, and they wear masks all year round. But what I found interesting is where we see raccoons in the book, it's always at nighttime. Now, this section in the Bandit Banquet, he talks about the book Rascal, and it described a human and raccoon friendship, that sort of thing I was prone to take as an instruction manual. So I think we need to use raccoons that are used throughout the story as an instruction manual. We have been getting some clues here and there, specifically when it talks about the Hearst family. Here's one of the first sections. So it says, you know, they're talking about trying to figure out this cipher. It could not be found looking around. Raccoons on the frame of the clock, I've looked and I've examined, and to the best of my ability, it says 1:16. We knew that we had to have a pinpoint destination, that you weren't just going to stumble on it, so we were studying day and night. There is another section down here where they bring it up again. So after 6 months of hitting boots on the ground, we knew we wasted all of our resources, and we knew we had to regroup then. Again, raccoons on the clock, 1:16. The Rearview Riches, we're seeing the section. It says a shimmering mirage, always dancing just beyond the horizon. And, you know, we covered the mirage part, and then, but he says shimmering, and that just makes me think of stars. We also know that, you know, Ursa East and the North Star, all this kind of stuff is really close to Justin, means a lot to him. When we revisit the song lyrics of Beyond the Map's Edge, there's a line here that says, "My compass spins no longer true." Now, when you are standing at the Grand Vista and you are looking towards her face, you're looking southeast area over to these Pioneer Mountains, and you're facing Polaris, which would be the North Star. I know a lot of these ramblings won't make sense until all of the pieces are put together, but in the documentary, when we see all of the times on the clock, I thought, well, maybe we come out and we take a photograph with her foot of 3. Foot of 3 could be a tripod. If you angle your camera at 20 degrees, so her foot of 3 at 20 degrees, it aims right at the horizon. Remember, we've got these 2 signs, and I do have images where you can clearly see what they say. But I found out last night was quite interesting. The Milky Way arch is being shown at night currently in the sky. And so I stayed up last night and was taking photos of the Milky Way. But what if this is another interpretation of his clue? So here's a tripod, which is a foot of 3. And then I had my camera, you know, aimed up like this towards the horizon and sky. And then if you look at your tripod here, it's at 20 degrees. See my little notch there? 20 degrees. Her foot of 3, 20 degrees. So maybe it isn't the bridge. Maybe it's this, where it revisits back to the treasure being a photograph, and with the land full of riches right in front of you. I don't know, just another mental note I wanted to add there. I thought that was pretty cool. It's a foot of frickin' 3, and it's at 20 degrees. Ugh. And right now it's Memorial Day weekend, and I've been taking pictures at the same time of those clock times where he has the train lock there. And the sight I'm seeing is incredible. I'm going to be showing pictures later, but you see her face off in the distance. there's pine trees on the side. And then the Milky Way is slowly coming up over the horizon outside of her face. I mean, it's a piece of artwork within its own, but matching up again to the cover art of the music that's at the end of the documentary, beyond the map's edge, you look at the horizon, that's where the text is. Okay, so we go back to the end here. Remember the vista, and then we see the clock. Now, how I interpreted this is the day that we're supposed to take the photograph, which is 5/26. And that is Memorial Day 2025. So there's two different versions of this song. There's a version where this woman, she's looking off into the night sky, and it says beyond the map's edge, and it sits right in the atmosphere there. This version of the song is longer, and then there's a shorter version of the song where there's a man looking off into the horizon. And with this, there is a very beautiful poetic meaning behind it. That's something I'll touch on in a later video. But if you look here, you know, this woman, she's looking off into the night sky. And if you look at the Grand Vista, which I took this photograph Memorial Day 2025 at 1:16 a.m., it, like, if you look at this part and you see her eye there, it lines up perfectly with the Milky Way. In episode 3 at 1:24, this is when the treasure had been found, and Justin says, and my phone started dinging, blowing up, getting messages from all sorts of people, and I thought, oh boy, somebody's making things up. He's got like this smirk on his face. And then down here it says, the treasure had been found under a canopy of stars in the lush forest of the Rocky Mountains. And he's looking right at the camera. I found another fun section. So in the treasure it says, nestled beside heaps of gold. Again, don't let that money distract you. Catching the light like frozen stars. I mean, it's getting really obvious right now, isn't it? And literally, I'm seeing the Milky Way. And he keeps talking about, I know that he ties it into Forrest Fenn's treasure, but he says he feels that there's a very fleeting window of time to find the treasure. What if it's like a celestial event? It's a new moon right now, or yes, it's a new moon right now, so no moonlight. Stars. He talks about it. I think it's in the afterassault when he's at Grasshopper Creek, and he talks about the sky. And you guys, I'm so lost in this. I could be totally cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but everything's drawing me to this exact spot at this exact time. I'm staying to watch this whole event as it unfolds in front of me, corresponding to the times on his clock. And I have never seen anything more beautiful in my entire life. I can't. Wow. I'm just in awe of tonight. I can't wait to show pictures. Justin's doing the book signing on the 21st, which is the summer solstice. So maybe that's when we're really supposed to take the pictures, because in the documentary, it's highlighted that it'll be found this summer. So I'm definitely going to be coming back for that book signing, and I wanted to bring one of these photographs to him because just the way that the shot is, it's flying over the mountain range, and he talks about, you know, what Forrest created, and it was something that captured his youth. And as the drone's flying over the Scenic Byway, it just encapsulates this incredibly special place to him. I have no words. Wow. It's been a labyrinth of, following this invisible thread. Now in the Tender Tornado chapter, we're on page 82. There's a couple things here. Grandma's knitting needles held the answer. She never suspected she was crafting my secret weapon. But it's taken me on a spiritual journey. I've done a lot of healing, surprisingly, in a couple months. So if I'm wrong, and it's totally fine if I am, I've gotten so much more out of this treasure than I can even tell you guys. Like, I'm literally walking in a stranger's shoes through this book and trying to see the world through his eyes. And, I didn't get a chance to be a part of the Forest Fen treasure hunt because I never even knew about it. But I'm learning so much about him now, too. And, wow, like, I was watching a YouTube video with Cynthia and Forrest, and they're reading a book. It's in the documentary. You can see the little clip of it. So this is the section in the documentary. So we see, Cynthia says, I got to know Forrest Fen the man, and it's like he reached in and grabbed my soul. And they're reading Educating Artie. Those words have never been more real in my life right now. Justin, whatever you're doing to me, there's some sorcery afoot, okay? But here we go. So Educating Artie, this is an interview that they're having. I have a link on my document, but this book talks about a bunch of different animals, and we got the raccoons that they also live in town. They're nocturnal, which means they stay in their homes during the day and come out at night. They're very curious, and if we see one, he'll most likely climb a tree. They wear their Halloween masks all year round. But here's where it stands out. There's these two profiles. I think we see it 3 times, though. I just didn't add the 3rd screenshot. But Forrest Fen mentions that that's Artie's mom. Is that also a nod to the Grand Vista? Look at those little feminine faces. Profile in the mountain. Oh, the connections to this is incredible. The fact that I'm at a vista where we're seeing the profile of it's got feminine features. What? Like, everything that I've looked at, read about, has brought me here. My next phase that I have that I want to check out. So I'm going to be leaving here in a couple of days. I got to go home and I got to get back to running my business. But I ordered Thrill of the Chase and I want to read it because I just want to hear the words from the man himself, since he's no longer here for me to meet and talk to him. But I want to learn more about his life, and these stories are so interconnected. I feel like a lot of the people that were doing this treasure hunt are trying to find their purpose, or trying to help their family. Some people are there just to try and figure out the answer to it so they can claim that they're a winner. I mean, there's so many different reasons why people are looking for a treasure. But for me, I don't know. Nature's very healing for me, and I also have ADHD, so when you stimulate the mind like this while being out in nature, learning history, learning about people, and all of this kind of stuff, everything's just been incredibly beautiful. And there's no money in the world that is worth this experience that I've had. So, and I came away with now a new lifelong friend, and she's so integral to the part of the story. And I just, it was like fate happened. I was here a couple days ago and I was checking out the sign that I've been talking about, the picture, the puzzle pieces, how everybody comes together and it tells just like this unique story. She just pulls up and I'm like, no way. I mean, I felt like I was looking at a celebrity because I've been examining the interviews and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I was going to leave her alone, but I'm like, I just need to go say hi, because when I was watching the documentary, I thought she was hilarious. But also, how important this hunt was for her too. I mean, she had this magical relationship with Forrest and he changed her life. And, you know, she talks about he just was able to do something to her soul, and I understand that after meeting her, she's done the same to me. I don't think she quite fully grasps how much, but yeah, she kind of reminds me of who I want to be when I'm older. She's got so much life and energy, and she views the world in such a beautiful way. And I don't know how you did this, Justin. I mean, I know you're incredibly smart and all this kind of stuff, but I don't even know if you're aware of what you've created for people. At least for me. I can't say for anybody else, but for me, you've definitely changed my life. So thank you.
Hello again.
Did you find your phone?
No, I haven't gone up there yet.
Okay,
I'm
good.
going
I
today.
was worried about you last time.
She
so.
made me stay. You can
Thank
thank
you,
her for
Cynthia.
that.
Thank you.
I kept her safe.
So you're going to go looking for it today?
Yeah, after this.
Where do you think it is at?
Well, I think it's at the beginning of where the conference.
Yeah, okay.
That's where we were walking yesterday.
Well, that area's not too bad.
No, and we didn't go that far.
And she has a metal detector with her. She thinks she can find it.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna bring it this time.
Is it a metal detector or pinpointing? Or
It's that metal detector, and I have a cookie.
you're well equipped.
I am.
This book always makes me nervous. You are super,
You're gonna be
super
careful not to
organized.
show any of that.
No, not a chance.
You won't see the cookie in there though.
In where?
In the book.
Let me see what you got there.
Bookmarks, but you can't show it to anybody.
Wow.
Oh my God, did he just see something to go home?
Maybe.
Oh.
You're making me nervous.
Really?
It's good. This is the most well-organized book I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So how long are you here? Can I make this out to anybody in particular?
Thank you.
I wanted to revisit this cover again and point out that there is a third face over here. You can see like the eyelash, the nose, the lips, the chin. And you see this face and it kind of sits on the man's chin. And if you look at the definition of taking it on the chin, it's to endure or accept misfortune courageously or stoically. One of her greatest strengths is her ability to take it on the chin. On page 96, Justin writes, after her mandatory 8 hours of rest, when the crew board turned and her name came up, she was back in the cab, same as always, not because she wasn't angry, but because 2 decades of being a woman in a man's world had taught her that the strongest statement she can make is simply showing up run after run, improving herself one call at a time. In the chapter Mom's House, page 3, it says, "A dozen of parchment clues led my friends through a labyrinth of discovery. I stumbled upon what I was sure was my golden ticket." If you look at the bookmark from the book signing, it says, "Take the ticket to ride." When I went to the book signing, I actually arrived a couple days earlier, and I visited Debbie at the bookstore, and I ended up purchasing this Alice in Wonderland book. And I thought it was pretty interesting because she mentioned that somebody had donated these books to the store and that the money would go towards a broken elevator. And if you look on page 52, it says, "It felt like being invited to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory only to discover you're lactose intolerant and the elevator's broken." When you're looking at the tablecloth here, I'm going to try and zoom in here. That sure looks like these kind of books. I wanted to circle back on this part of the poem. "Double arcs on granite bold, where secrets of the past still hold. Beyond the reach of time's swift race, wonder guards this sacred space." Now, there is going to be more to this story, but before that happens, I need to figure out where these secrets of the past still hold are.
We're the fighters. We won't stop, won't quit no matter the cost. We keep keeping on. We're the dreamers. We push through the darkness with all that we've got. We keep keeping on. But oh mama, we've made it to the other side singing, oh mama, oh mama. Hold your head up high, this is our time. Hold your head up high, this is our time. Together we will rise, step into the light. We were born to come alive. Hold your head up high, this is our time. This is our
This is more of a personal video, but if you look at
ways up,
my profile
climbing into
and then you look at the mountain back there,
leave the shadows below. But oh mama,
it looks the same, doesn't it? It's a little creepy. I don't know what this message is, but it's eerie. Extraterrestrial, maybe? I think so.